Episode 174 of the All the Books Show, recorded at the David A. Howe Public Library, where we talk book news, author news, and literary news. I'm Eric Mickles.
And I'm Nic Gunning.
Hi, Nic Gunning.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
Good.
I like that new sharp sweater you're wearing.
Thank you.
This is an exciting episode. I'm excited about this episode today because we had a nice chat with one of my favorite Christmas authors, Donna VanLiere. I first discovered these many years ago and have read one pretty much every Christmas since then.
Right.
So it's always a good time, always a good Christmassy time.
Right.
Donna VanLiere, if you're not familiar with her, is the New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of over 14 novels, including The Christmas Shoes, which is part of the Christmas Hope series. Several in this series have been adapted as movies. The first two have Rob Lowe. You got Neil Patrick Harris. The Hallmark Channel made several more into movies, all well received, all popular around Christmas time. Very talented, very prolific author. And we had a chance to sit down and ask her some questions. So roll it.
All the Books presents Author Spotlight.
Hi, Nick.
Hi, Donna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. Probably better than you because I didn't spend the morning at the dentist.
Yes, I know. I always dread it, but
Yes,
it's got to be done.
absolutely. Well, I'm here with Eric Mickles, and we've just got a few questions for you about some of your books, if you have a minute for us.
Sure.
Great. Okay, well, this first question has a long lead-in, so everybody buckle up. When I was in high school, I went to this youth convention down in Tennessee, and there was a band there, and it was New Song, and they played their hit, Christmas Shoes, and this was July, so I think that's a good indicator of just how present that song was. I mean, everybody loved it. So my question here is, how did that roll into you taking the skeleton of that song and turning it into a book series?
Well, actually, we were backstage at a New Song conference.
Really?
It was many years ago. Yep. And I remember it was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was in July. It was sweltering hot that day. And Eddie, who's a longtime friend, he's the founder and one of the main songwriters there for New Song. He said, Donna, I'm thinking about writing a Christmas song. And he gave me just a short, maybe 2-sentence premise. And he said, what do you think? Do you think that would make a good Christmas song? And I said, I actually think that'd make a really good book. And so just kind of tongue in cheek, he said, well, you're the one with the computer, get to writing it. And he was just teasing. He had no idea that he'd really kind of sparked my imagination.
Yeah.
And I went home and I actually did start to write the book. And I was already well into the book before they had the song written.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize you were just like right there at the ground floor.
Yes.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so they kind of happened at the same time, but of course it takes a lot less time to write a song than a book.
Sure, yeah.
And the song came out first, which was great. It was a good lead-in for the book.
I bet, yeah. So this was your first published novel, right?
It was my first novel, yes.
Okay.
It had not been my first book, but it was my first novel.
Oh, okay. All right.
So in your Christmas Hope series, you always manage to have certain characters from out the series appear. And why did you decide to do that, and how do you approach it?
I do like some of them to kind of reappear, but I never want the reader to feel as if they have to start at the very first book in the series, and you have to read it in order, because I avoid series like that. I'm like, I don't know if I have the time commitment, to go
Sure.
back and start with number one. So I always want the books to be standalone. But for those readers who are familiar with the books, they'll say, oh, I remember Gloria, from another book. But I always like them to be standalone so that the reader isn't confused.
Right, sure.
Yeah, that is always a nice little surprise, when you're reading along and you'll recognize a book from a previous one. And I get what you're saying about the whole series thing. Sometimes people can just see that, book 3, and they're like, oh, never mind. That happens all the
Right.
time. When we go to check a
Right.
book out, and they'll notice that, they'll be like, oh, just forget it, just put it back. So yeah, I think that's
Right.
clever.
Yeah, that would be me. I'm one of those readers.
Well, I'm a big Christmas book fan. I mean, every year I'm always like, what am I going to read this year? What am I going to read this year? And for the last several, I always have one of yours in the stack here. So I enjoy them myself. And one of the things I've noticed about Christmas books in general is that it's hard. I think it's hard to make them, have that holiday feel, make them heartwarming without kind of dipping into like schmaltzy and like overly sentimental. And I think you do a good job of making them, just how I want them without kind of pushing it over that edge. And I just wonder, how it is that you do that. I mean, do you have that in your mind?
Absolutely. I want it to be, I want them to be real characters. I
Right.
want them to be people that would be taken from real life, because I live in reality. I don't live in a fantasy world at all. I'm very much aware of the reality around me and the realities in people's lives. So I want the characters to be someone that the reader could appreciate, they could identify with, they could be like, oh, wow, I'm a lot like this person. So I always approach it from, okay, what is the storyline? Who are the characters? How is it realistic? But I also want there always to be hope, because we live in a culture that is faced with many problems.
Yes, we do.
A lot of problems. And so I know that the reader is aware of that, but I also want the reader to know that there's hope. There's always hope in this world. You know, Cicero said, while there's life, there's hope. As long as we're breathing, there's hope in our lives. And that's how I approach every single book. And it's how I approached this one, The Christmas Star, the brand new one, because there's a character in there, one of the main characters, and she's divorced, and she thinks, well, this is it. You know, this is my life. This has been my life for the last 6 years. You know, I'm a divorced woman, and I don't have children, and, you know, where do I go now? But I wanted to approach it from the fact that, hey, there's unexpected turns up ahead that we never take into account. And I wanted her to approach some of those unexpected turns that she hadn't anticipated.
Yeah, I've always found your characters to be strong and relatable, and you know, obviously a book's kind of made or broken on how strong the characters are. So I think you do a good job of you know, having a good hook that you're rooting for this person. You know, you want to know what happens. And with those characters, I wonder, what was it like for you as an author when you have these characters that have been in your mind, have been in your computer, ultimately on a page, then to see them, you know, come alive with somebody like Rob Lowe playing them? I mean, what is that like for you as an author?
Well, it's kind of surreal.
I bet.
Because you think, wow, I didn't anticipate, again, those unexpected turns up ahead. You know, I didn't anticipate this happening. And sometimes you think, oh, wow, this character is spot on. You know, this actor who's playing this character. And then there's others where it's like, wow, they missed the mark on that one. You know, I did not have her in mind at all. But, you know, that's just how it goes.
Sure.
And I've always been of the frame of mind, as long as they maintain the theme of a book, because they can't put all the characters in. They can't put all the subplots in to a television movie, but if they maintain the theme, I'm happy with it.
And what is that process like? I mean, are you involved much in when they're adapted like that? Do you have much say, or are there things that you know, what is that like?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that I have much say at all. They do let me read the script. I'm allowed to look over them, and I can kind of add suggestions, that sort of thing.
Just sort of nudge things in the right direction.
Right. And they have changed some things along the way. I think they call it creative consultation is what I have.
Okay.
But, you know, beyond that, I don't have anything that I'm able to do.
All right. So last question. You have a new book out, The Christmas Star. And I guess our question is just, what was the most challenging part of writing this book right now?
Well, it's just, I always feel the time crunch, because I always write when my kids are in school.
Okay.
If my kids are home, I'm not at the computer trying to write, because it's impossible if you have children to try to do that.
Right.
So the time crunch for me is always the biggest issue, and thinking, oh, am I going to be able to turn this in on time? And of course, there's always so many things that need to be done. There's a load of laundry that needs to be put in. You know, there's dishes that need to be washed and put away.
So life.
Right. So there's always those things around me as well. I don't have people who do that for me. I am the chief bottle washer and cook and taxi driver. So I have all of those commitments, running a household and just being sure to get the book on time. So that's always in the back of my mind.
Right.
So this many books in, are you finding that you still enjoy the process? Is it still something that you, that you find rewarding and challenging?
I do. I love the process, because I love Christmas. I love the meaning of Christmas. I love the hope of Christmas, and I know that it's a dark and depressing time for a lot of people. And I always keep that in mind when I'm writing, that, hey, Christmas is not the joyous occasion, the joyous holiday that it is for a lot of people. For many people, it can be very lonely. And I always approach the books of, how can this help someone this Christmas season? And I'm so grateful because I do hear from a lot of readers who say, I'm alone, I'm divorced, I'm widowed, my children are grown, I'm an empty nester, and that the books do help them. They do give them, some ray of hope, a glimpse of hope that maybe they thought, it's not really out there for me this year. So that for me is really rewarding as an author.
Oh, I can imagine. So. I mean, I know whenever I finish one, they always leave me feeling a little bit more positive.
Yes, and I'm always so grateful when I do hear from people saying, I asked my local library if they would get this, because I know some authors are like, no, I want you to buy the book.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Hey, I'm pro-library. I still
Great.
take my kids to the library, every couple of weeks to refill on books. So
that's great.
I love the local library and what they represent in communities.
Well, we've got your books here, so any of our locals can come in and check them out anytime.
Awesome.
Well, hey, thanks again for doing this. We really appreciate it, and I know our listeners are going to enjoy it.
Thank you both, Nic and Eric, and I hope you have a great Christmas.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.